Joni,
Hi,
good to see you.
to see you too. I'm excited to see this.
We'll start in a couple of minutes.
Sure. I'll stand up and rest my back.
And then will this be on YouTube? Or
We'll yes.
Be back soon.
Book is beautiful, by the way. I love the book.
Quite.
Right?
oh, gorgeous.
Lovely.
All right, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to the Writing Resilience Anthology reading. Writing Resilience is a supportive and generative workshop for people affected by trauma, addiction, and/or mental illness. We write to increase coping and resilience, as well as to work towards creating a poetry collection, a fiction collection, an essay collection, a memoir, or a novel. Today you will hear from some of the work created in this workshop. The work is a testament to the indomitable spirit of the writer who transforms pain into art. Here you will hear pain surmounted by sheer grit. And work that is creative, vulnerable, and loving. Here you will have yes. And without further ado, we will start. Let's hear from Rachel Blum.
I'm reading two different poems. The first one.
Actually, 1 second. Let me read your bio.
Okay.
Rachel Blum is the author of The Doctor of Flowers, a book of poems reflecting the loss of her eldest daughter to pediatric cancer, published in 2018 by 3A Towers Press. Her second book of poems, Talisman, is available online as a free ebook on her poetry website, rachelblumpoetry.com. She has taught creative writing in mental health and hospital settings. Take it away, Rachel.
The first poem I'm reading was for the prompt, What I Said and What I Should Have Said. I said, but the light is astonishing, and I think maybe I should have said more about weeping, or how like rain light is, a quiet animal face mirroring the good, the saddest, and mortality. On his deathbed, he said, I really am not sure what is happening. And I nodded. And now I'd like another chance to sit and fail to say what must not have been important enough to say, when instead I said I love you and was relieved to have said something simple and true. The sky purpling over July, how it does. And the other poem I'm reading was for the prompt trust. And I have an opening that's a quote, a Simone Weil quote. God gives himself to men either as powerful or as perfect. It is for them to choose. The trust that we will pause and look for perfect love, witnessing our broken world, and find a green ring of light supporting first syllables, and rest there while an orchestra of birds sounds out the window Sabbath morning. Face to face, the residue of a nightmare, breezes momentarily dispersed.
All right, thank you, Rachel. By the way, the link to the buy page for the anthology is in the chat. It is from Mad Hat Press. Next up, we have Bill Considine, who first formally studied writing poetry at Harvard with Elizabeth Bishop. Bill was a member of the Playwrights Workshop of the Public Theater, with 4 staged readings there. He presented his plays in performance at Theater of New City, La Mama, Brooklyn Army Terminal, Limbo Lounge, Ear Inn, ABC No Rio, and Dixon Place. His books include The Furies and Strange Coherence, both from The Operating System, The Other Myrtle, Finishing Line Press, and Continent of Fire, Kelsey Books. His full-length plays, Moral Support and Women's Mysteries, were presented in New York City in 2019 to critical praise. His recent short verse plays include Aunt Peg and the Contometer at Bowery Poetry Club in 20, Persephone's Return, Odyssey's End, John Milson in the Tower, and A Common Tongue, all on Zoom during the COVID pandemic, and Overdrinks and Oedipus in Love at Polaris North, New York City in 2023. Bill is formerly served as a lecturer in law at Pace Law School and administrative law judge for the city of New York, a city administrator and arbiter, and as vice president of a public service corporation. Please go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Larissa. This is Being Bullied. Things got better in high school. By the start of junior year, I was serving on the school newspaper. I was also persuaded by a friend to join their cross-country running team that fall. For the school newspaper, I submitted a signed editorial against the snobbishness of clothes shaming and the domineering focus on fashions among boys. You had to have a camel-collared V-neck sweater and the right kind of jacket, a certain brand name, available in off-white or blue. A couple clothing stores downtown were emphasized as the places to find these essential garments, and the store names figured prominently in bragging and taunting. My editorial against this was published and created a storm. My first inkling was in gym class, when we boys were in our gym clothes in a straight line along the edge of the basketball court, waiting for the gym instructor to emerge eventually from his office. One fellow stepped out of line to yell at me for the editorial and kick me in the rear, in front of everyone. About this same time, in another gym class session, we boys had to climb a rope all the way to the rafters, one at a time, in front of each other. I knew what was at stake, but couldn't do it. I was afraid of heights. I still am. In the whole class, only one other boy and I didn't climb to the top. This marked me as weak at a bad time. There was a group of guys from the suburb White Oak who started picking on me. It was attitudes like theirs that I had criticized in the editorial. I was chiding their jokes and taunts about other people's clothing. They were a richer group and full of themselves. Some had cars. At this time, a girl from White Oak spoke to me in the cafeteria at lunch, saying that she was friends with the popular evening DJ on the local rock and roll radio station, and he wanted to invite me to appear on his radio program to discuss my editorial. I declined, out of mortification at what the editorial had already cost me. Of course, I should have accepted. Several of this clique heard this offer. They were in my geometry class. They also apparently resented how readily I caught on to geometry. They took my geometry textbook in the cafeteria and passed it around, smashing food on multiple pages, which stuck the pages together, making the book largely unreadable and useless. They warned me not to tell on them. This clique started calling me Whitey, after a boy who had recently supposedly run away with the circus when it had been in town. They accused me of masturbating, like him. Being a masturbator was a key element in being like Whitey. I think poor Whitey, whom I had only heard of, had been bullied terribly, and maybe joining the circus was just a cover story for his actual whereabouts. My work in geometry plummeted at once. The teacher soon noticed that I had no textbook, so he gave me another. No comments. In chemistry class, one of this clique sat behind me and another sat beside me. When the teacher was out of the room, the one behind me, let's call him George, started jabbing me in the back with a pencil. The tip suddenly broke off in my back. I worried that this alien thing was in my back and might have further consequences like blood poisoning. I still have the small scar. I left class to go to the student nurse. My parents were called and came to the school, my dad in his plumbing clothes. George was easily identified from sitting behind me as the one who had jabbed me in the back, but I don't know that he suffered any consequences for his mere adolescent mischief. After that, his friend sitting beside me, let's call him Jack, started taunting me that I had told on George. Couldn't I stand up for myself instead of running to the school nurse? Was I afraid to fight? No. Would I fight with Frank, a boy I'd never met whom the clique apparently admired for having had boxing lessons and driving a sporty car? No, I had no quarrel with Frank. What about Jack himself? Did I think I could beat him up? I said, I don't know if I could beat you up, but I'm not afraid of you. Well, Jack said, why don't we see? Let's see if you're afraid to fight me. I could see clearly that I was targeted for more bullying, with many incidents already: the kicking, the geometry book destroyed, the pencil stab in the back, and their derision of me constantly as the new Whitey. So I had to fight. It was quickly arranged for after school in the park. I got a friend to serve as my second. For after school, I went to the designated place in the park, and soon the clique came in their cars. Some friends of mine came too. I think there were about 8 onlookers. I wasn't afraid of a fight, but I was afraid of getting caught and getting suspended from school, a black mark that could, I feared, ruin my hopes for a college scholarship. Even so, I had to fight to show that there were consequences for pushing me around. And so, I had a fist fight after school in the park in the fall of 11th grade, 16 years old. We punched each other several times in the face, then grappled. As he was somewhat bigger than me, he ended up on top, knelt on my arms, and slapped my face several times. He asked me to say uncle, and slapped me again and again. I thought of getting out from under him by bringing my feet up under his armpits and using my leg strength to topple him. I feared that then the fight could grow in intensity with more extensive injuries and a school suspension would loom. I said uncle, and it was over. We shook hands. I took pleasure in pointing out the bruised lip I'd given him. And the bullying stopped. My brother Jim heard about the fight at school and told my dad. Dad was solicitous. He wanted to know how I felt at the time. I told him it was so stupid that these kids from White Oak were jealous of me because I was on an athletic team, the cross-country running team, and they weren't. And I was much better in school too. So they picked on me, and I had to fight one of them. He asked how I felt at the time, and I said the main thing I felt was how boring it was to have to go through all this nonsense for these jerks. The end.
Right, thank you, Bill. Next up, we have Paula Curci. who was National County Poet Laureate Emeritus 2022 through 2024, and is producer of Calliope's Corner and What the Buzz on WRHU. She is a poet correspondent for The Scene and a certified Journal to the Self writing instructor. Under the Acoustic Poets Network brand, she's produced Emissary Bittersweet and Done That Poetry and Posics. Paula spearheads the Shore Poets open mic and the free verse workshops at the Long Beach Library, Hicksville's Library open mic, and Port Washington Library's Poetry Reading Circle. She's co-edited Poetry, That's a Sure Thing, in an Unsure World, an anthology of micro-memoirs from the South Shore poets of Long Island, and has written several chapbooks. You can find her work on SoundCloud, and Amazon. Go ahead, Paula.
Hi, all. I'm going to start with dysfunctional timeline, as that is the name of the exercise that was given that this poem resulted from. She was a child when her name was called, looking through a mirror, a preschooler when she was held in the hallway, when they began removing her. Faking sleep as a toddler, she ignored her family so she could be alone, so she could run away from her invader, unable to see her protector or herself. As a teen, she inhaled MTV, THC, and XYZ. As an adolescent, she was forced, and again forced, into submission of emotional stillness. She was erased. She wasn't blonde, long-legged, not enough, not the girl who got the guy, not the thin girl. She was the girl who wasn't. She was a young adult when she gorged late at night, and as an adult, she continued to heave and heave, gagging on the feelings she didn't know how to control. At home, she got what she asked for, ignored. The prodigal son had bigger problems, more important, more severe, louder, meaner. In adulthood, more poor decisions. She never carried, and when she wedded, she married herself to gaslights, the kind of love that doubts. She analyzed verbal abuse, power misuse, depression, regression, family decay, and how it was swept away under the rug for years. And the second poem was on the other side of that. The exercise was to write about a moment of goodness, a moment of where you felt well. And I call this Abodanza. And I usually ask the audience to participate. You're all welcome to do that. When I say Abodanza, if you could all say Abodanza as well. Abodanza means abundance in Italian. Abodanza,
Abadanza.
I yelled at the head of the table, raising my Chianti. I had a full view of the yard, all my gal friends surrounding me. There was plenty of joy, of support. We are lucky girls, I reminded them. We survived. We are still alive. Eat up, I said. We have plenty of cold antipasto, lasagna. It was one of those days, where everything was delicious. The air was sweet. The breeze was cool. The birds tweeted like in the utopian genre movies where everything was all right with a perky, happy ending. Around the table, one by one. How did you do it? How was it done? They had the tour up the spiral staircase of the carriage house. I told them the deed says an unmarried woman. I laughed. They chuckled. Take a mental picture, I spoke. We have plenty of hours, of moments, of laughing to do. But this day, like all days, will be over. So look around, record what you see. Not the home, not the house, not the yard, not the furniture, but you and me. Let us remember our worth, our friendship, and how it feels to be free. Abodanza.
Danza.
Abodanza.
Thank you, Larissa.
Thank you, Paula. Anna Fridlis is a memoirist, poet, and essayist based in Newark, New Jersey, in indigenous Lenape land. She lives and writes at the intersection of multiple identities: Jewish, Soviet immigrant, white, disabled, neurodivergent, and queer. Her work addresses the impact of intergenerational trauma on the trajectory of a life, tracking trauma's sweeping effects on mental and physical health, family relationships, creative output, and the scope of the imagination. Anna's work captures one version of a Soviet Jewish immigrant story that both faces its utter devastation and searches for answers in deep healing, in self-expression, nature, and somatics. Anna teaches first-year writing at the Parsons School for the New School for Design, and cohabits with her bunny Willow, who also happens to be her muse. Take it away, Anna.
Thank you. I'm reading just the beginning part of my essay, Black Hole. I started my summer break with a bright hope for my fall sabbatical from university teaching, to draft a significant chunk of the memoir I hadn't been writing for the last 7 years since graduating from my MFA in creative nonfiction. I started the memoir as my MFA thesis, though instead of focusing on my own life at the time, I dove headfirst into my maternal grandparents' youthful trans-Siberian journey to Sakhalin Island, where they were sent on work assignment as newlyweds by the Soviet state in the 1950s. I suppose I started there because of a desire to begin at the beginning, which for me was the origin story of my family as I knew it for most of my childhood, the story of Mama, Baba, and Deda, my grandparents. I figured during my MFA that I would eventually get to my own life story after exploring Baba, Deda, and Mama's, because mine didn't seem to invite or even allow a head-on approach. Frustratingly, I could not explain my life coherently, even to myself. Memories of my childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood seemed to have been atomized and recombined in alien ways, as though having journeyed through and emerged on the other side of a black hole, as though they belonged to someone else. I was always trying to write about the black hole, but its gravity swallowed all of my words and imagination, so I couldn't seem to make sense of it all. Whenever I tried, I would end up getting sucked back inside it, lured by the need to name what was happening to me in something other than metaphor. I realized I could not write from inside it, but I also couldn't find a lasting way out. I did not even understand what it was in any other terms. Only the metaphor could capture the experience in language. When the black hole swallowed my relationship with my mom and my entire US-based extended family 3 years into my post-MFA writing drought, I was left to make sense of a story that seemed to have come to its natural conclusion. I thought, well, now I can write it. I no longer have to worry about how my writing will impact those relationships and can just focus on myself. But I couldn't. My throat clenched tighter than ever, and writing wouldn't come, only tears, rage, grief. The special fountain pen that Baba, who had since passed away, had gifted me a decade earlier as a college graduation present, had disappeared, and along with it, so did my strength and hope for writing my story. And for the rest, you'll have to buy the book. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Irish Gersh has her MFA in creative writing from Florida International University. She taught sociology and English composition classes at Brookline College and CNF. Iris's poems and stories are published in national and local literary magazines and anthologies, including Packin House Review, Alembic, Manzana Mountain Review, and yearly and quarterly fixed and free anthologies. Her poetry book, A Thousand Questions, was published by Finishing Line Press in December 2020. Since December of 2021, Iris joined the writing group Writing Resilience, where she listens to and shares her writing with a group of supportive, brilliant writers. Take
Hear,
it away,
hear.
Iris.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. My piece is called Untangling My Father. My father, Nat Gersh, was rarely happy. He shared the story how he lived in snowy Connecticut on a farm as a youngster with his parents, who had emigrated from Eastern Europe, possibly Belarus, Lithuania, Poland, or Russia. It was a hard life, one I imagine he would think about in his private thoughts. He talked about it only if we kids complained. Then he would tell us that he had to walk 8 miles to school. We had a school bus to pick us up. Our house in Kerhonkson was on Route 209, a 2-lane state road, heavily trafficked in the summer when tourists came by busloads to the Shawangunks, known then as the Borscht Belt. Those summer months, for a few years' duration, my parents ran a restaurant from our closed-in front porch. 3 gas pumps dominated the front yard. My dad pumped the gas. My mother made chicken salad sandwiches and whipped our chocolate malt shakes, endless amounts, frothing in a shiny 2-quart Hamilton Beach blender. She usually sat with her customers, who were more neighbors than strangers. Outside the porch, around the corner from the red and yellow tin billboards of Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, beech nut gum, and Dr. Pepper, my sister Louise and brother rattled around in his homemade jalopy, a 4-wheel contraption with impressionist drawings glued onto the sides, until the day Louise cleaved her chin on an open nail. My father's reaction, he drove her to the hospital and once home hurled the car across the road. Route 209 over the years became the receptacle for burnt out toasters, radios, and anything else my father tossed across the road. When my mother traveled to work, he made us dinner. If he burned the hamburgers, he would swear stuff about my mother, and there went the toaster. At the time, I never knew why he was even home, only later figuring out that he probably had been laid off work and found it humiliating to be home while my mother worked. One of these warm summer afternoons when everyone finished chores, I sat at my desk, the sun shining on me and my coloring book. I could hear the wash cycle end in furious spinning. I colored in Betty's hair the obligatory yellow and Veronica's black, and then suddenly Archie turned pink and Jughead turned blue. I saw black spot the crayons and passed out. My sister shook me awake a little too hard, I thought. Then my father and brother carried me from the porch. I looked up at my brother, who said I might be faking it, so I closed my eyes tighter than ever. My mother laid me down gently in my parents' large bed. She applied cold washcloths to my neck, dabbed Vicks on my nostrils, one of her cure-alls for any ailment, and murmured soothing words until I drifted off to a natural sleep with thoughts of my father and brother watching over me. When my friends visited, they heard my father's words seeming to swell up from way inside him. Some words were in Yiddish, like, they could all gay and dreared, go to hell. He could be talking about anyone. Many friends later would tell me that my father was a rageaholic. A dear friend felt that this was the biggest thing we had in common, angry fathers. One memorable time he yelled hard and long at my sister and chased her around the house because she had the nerve to walk with a neighbor, Carlos Santiago, through the cornfield. I swung on the hammock, feeling glad it was not me being chased. I felt hopeless and powerless as I looked out towards the neighbor's field. My mother yelled at him to stop. Louise confided one evening to her husband and me how the incident affected her. He was abusive and it traumatized her. His anger, his very worst behavior stopped, as many things did, when my mom yelled at him to stop. He tried to diminish her and called her a dumb ox. Still, she was always the peacemaker. I was the youngest in the family, my sister 3 years older, and my brother a whopping 8 years older. I did feel loved by my parents, though my siblings thought I was spoiled. During the 3 years I lived alone with them, I was privy to conversations about my brother being a hippie and my sister's choices also. In high school, I'd get into debates with him, and he told me that I was really smart and that I should become a lawyer. I think that as a teenager, I began to understand more of the family dynamics. Yes to continuing our education, but no to whatever we decided to do in life. In my teens and 20s, up until my father died at age 66, I remember only a few occasions seeing my brother and father together. Before he left for Berkeley, my brother had a happening at our house in Kerhonkson. My father was kind of excited. He for once was okay with the blasting music, but absolutely no one messing around. He directed traffic to the front yard and onto the road. Just want to read one more place. It finally became my turn to be the bad one when I went to college. As they moved me into college the first day, there were all these guys hanging out on the windowsills across from the dorm. My dad said something like, "Well, you better not be doing anything like that." Those were the years that he wrote me letters. I think they were gold, a mix of his and my mom's daily lives, then pages of rants. My involvement with social activists and belief in activism during those years aggravated him. "I didn't send you to some Ivy League college so you can join the hippies like your brother." At this point, I let go of him emotionally. I knew at heart, like we say in our family, at heart, he was a good man. He formed us. My father hurt us never with weapons, but with threats. We bore the brunt of his words. There was just so much he was willing to learn and maybe change. He was disappointed in all of us now. As Anna said, you will need to get the book to read the rest of this. And hopefully I will have more. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Next up, we have Nina Glueckselig, who is an inveterate New Yorker despite time spent living in Boston and San Francisco. She studied fiction writing with Frank Bergen at Vassar College and attended Luis Arias creative writing class through Harvard University's continuing education program. She has attended Larissa Shmailo's Writing Resilience workshop since 2020. This has enabled her to complete pieces like Apple of My Eye, Crack in a Rock, Grapefruit and Coleslaw, and many others, all with a view toward completing a memoir. Her writing deals with her experience as a child of Holocaust survivors, writing about the sensuous beauty of gemstones, jewelry, and clothing. She also explores her experiences with depression. Take it away, Nina.
Some of you may be familiar with this, but it's one of my favorites, and it's called Just the Dog. I never had a dog before. I always had the fantasy of having a puppy, jumping on me, licking me, thrilled to see me even after a moment's absence. My parents said, "Will you walk the dog?" Case closed. I don't know how to write about something positive. I'm committed to anxious, afraid, sad, scared. I see him on Facebook and pick him out of a video of 4 puppies chasing each other. He is white with a large black spot on his back. I say to my husband, "This is my dog." I am recovering from a suicide attempt. Some friends think a dog is a bad idea. You're too vulnerable, they say. What about the cats? Do you actually think you will walk him in the winter? Oh, there he goes. He will get very big. How long do Bernedoodles live? My son Max asks me. If he lives 12 years, you will be 77. That's too old to have a dog. He's calculating my demise. Why do others think they know what is best for me? What about the advice I always get not to project myself too much into the future? The eager, euphoric, endearing movement of his tail thumping against the wood floor. I know this is my dog. I'm connected to him. I know this for certain. No one can tell me otherwise. This is my dog. My therapist laughs at what people have been saying to me and tells me he likes the idea. Ellie says this might just be the ticket. I raised my children. They put everything in their mouths and I had to watch their every move. They were eager, euphoric, endearing puppies. I took care of them. I bathed them, toweled their hair dry, and held them close when they cried. They drilled their heads into my shoulder, and I told them everything would be okay, even if I knew it couldn't possibly always be okay. I was convincing myself also. We meet Julius Q. Pupster, a name my husband Bill came up with, and it feels right. I watch him trot from person to person in the breeder Denise's living room. He jumps on me and licks my face. He doesn't know if the small world he inhabits will be kind to him. How can someone hurt an animal? How can someone hurt a child? I have a chance to make the life of a living being better. I want that. This is who I am, a mother, my parents, my children, my patients. I love him already, and that is because this is my dog. Don't you get it? In the mornings before he comes, I lie in bed. What was the point of getting up? My whole life I had a purpose. I would get up even if I didn't feel like it. I'd shower and dress and get my children up. I was always hurrying to work, the grocery store, driving my children to school and music lessons, making dinner, lather, rinse, repeat. Tedious, but full of joyful laughter, intense tears. Now I write a gratitude list. I write my morning pages. I try to put the images of downing all the pills out of the movie screen of my mind. I am still convinced I have had a good life and it was a good time to make an exit. But I survive and I am not at all glad about it. I am tired of the hospital where time passes so slowly and the food tastes like moldy sponge. People talk in the halls during the night and I cannot sleep. The hospital is no place to get better. I go home and face what I did. I thrash my legs around and turn from side to side. But I think of the dog every morning in the dark of my room. I feel hope. I look at the videos Denise texts me of him. Joy. So pure and precious. Running towards life. I see him running towards me, hearing his feet thump on the ground, and the dark lightens. I want to be there in the morning when he gallops toward me, wagging his tail. I make myself get up. My father was always glad to see me. I always came home from far away and couldn't wait for him to open the door. I was glad to see him too. I know this will be the same with Julius because this is my dog. Denise is sick, probably with COVID, so we meet her son-in-law at McDonald's off of I-90. Like a hostage exchange, I hand him the money in $100 bills. He hands me the leash, and the dog is now mine. We pick up all 21 pounds of him and put him in the back seat of the car. He wriggles beside me, settles down, and puts his head on my leg. I tell him he is a good boy and everything is okay. I'm telling myself everything is okay. Okay, okay, over and over, okay, and I believe it. Things weren't okay, and now they are. I run my hand over his curly hair, and he lifts up his head and licks me. Okay, this is my dog.
Mm.
Thank you, Nina. Martha Jackson Kaplan is a recipient of the Zilpha Map Robinson International Poetry Award and 2 Editor-in-Chief Awards from Mobius, the poetry magazine. She won both a first and a third place in the Poets' Choice contest from the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets. Publications can be found in Cirque, a literary journal for the North Pacific Rim, Hummingbird, The Night Heron Box, Unlikely Story, including the 20th anniversary issue, Verse Wisconsin, Wisconsin Poets Calendar, Nix's Made Review, and Bending Genres Journal. Additionally, she has been published in numerous anthologies. A book of her poems, Wind Eyes, is forthcoming from Mad Hat Press. Take it away, Martha.
I have 4 poems here. The first one really is about the trauma of writing itself. Excuse me, I seem to have this empty page before me stymies the breach from brain to heart to hand. I can't breathe, can't breathe. My eyes fuzz, fingers ache for words. What blank rancor, what pique, what grudge ruptures you, word hoard? Break and give leave. Set me a signing net to draw a couple-colored word from out the river Leith. Wind me a path along the welkin way. Let me see a sea of words wend their way away. Let me wail song along the Wendell Sea, and send me sails to cross the old whale road in ships to harpoon ancient words. Set them in baskets of reeds. Lay them at crossroads so travelers and traders in words can span the breach, never starve for lack of wind eyes for breath to write a brindled page.
Wow.
And then, well, some of you may recognize this kind of experience. So, for days of old lang syne, here is the song that couldn't be sung on the night after, on the day of the transformation of you, my friend, my mistake, to you, abductor. Here is the song for the crosstown careen, for the car and its parts, with my hand on the handle of the unclosed door. Here is a song for me, who jumped from the car when you slowed, when you left me in the midnight dark. Here is a song for the wheels of the car and the jolt of the bump that you hit, that you thought was my body. And here is a song for the houses all closed in the dark and the people with guns by their beds. And here is a song for the fear that resides in the night of the long walk home. And here, old friend, is the rage that follows the fear. And here is the scar that remains. And as some of you know, I lived about 10 years in Houston, Texas, and this comes from those years. Night rides on blue roads east of Austin. Crackled tongues of vitreous brains female my absent mind, roving through dirty sock Kmarts, whirling with surreptitious, gun-racked landscapes, racked gauzy with ruined teachers and gangly piney woods, echoing phallus thoughts that ricochet, holy, holy, holy lost souls, picnic tabling icehouse nights with fisty throats, slinging plastic-wrapped nostalgia that croaks in lano-lifted heat, bloody with clandestine couplings, hanging on starry-stranded hopes that Spanish the mosses off gnarly shadows of old live oaks beside two-lane asphalt, wheeling over ghost hosts of ancient footpaths, gulfing from glasslands to the shill country, conjuring psilocybin visions of losing my way along the Brazos. And just one quick one. This is for my son, Jonathan, who's a mathematician. Across the Missouri breaks. When I was a fisher boy, I sang beside a pond on a high prairie where the sky burned above and clouds owned the land. When I was a fisher boy in a yellow hat and yellow boots, I held stardust and lime from ancient bones. Time clothed me silver. When I was a fisher boy, I flew over continents, soaring over mountains to the sea, traversing desert buttes and red stone of carved cliffs, seeking roots of curves in algorithms, both wise and true. Thank you.
You're muted, Larissa. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Linda Kleinbub is the founding editor of Pink Trees Press, curator of Fahrenheit Open Mic, contributing editor at Girls Right Now, and co-founder of Pen Pal Poets. She's the author of Cover Charge, Autonomedia 2022, and Appear to Dance, Pink Trees Press 2024. She's co-editor of the Silver Tongue Devil Anthology, Pink Trees Press 2020. Linda was one of 6 local poets invited to read at the America's Poetry Festival of New York 2021. She earned her Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from the New School. She's published in Best American Poetry, The Brooklyn Rail, The Observer, Sensitive Skin Magazine, Live Mag, and many anthologies. Take it away, Linda.
All right, everybody, got 2 poems and a short essay. This is called I Promise Myself. Irregular synapses penetrated my thoughts, returned to yesterday, overgrown moss. I searched the skyline sunset, seeking stars into sight. My steps are guided, evolution entering life. Living, floating, eyes open, clouds hang high. I promise myself to work on recovery, to hold steady on rocky shores. I promise myself to face fear, for I am told, behind fear, the story gets told. This is called Frigid. We traveled together an existence of family. Now we live a routine filled with chores and what's for dinner. I seek quilted comfort, resist speaking about your bad behavior. We live like roommates. I may bear grudge of what you've become. I can't change you. I stay sheltered, closed-mouthed, write emotions in a notebook. My life is in revision mode, unsure how long speechlessness will survive. And this is called Victory at Vacation Day Camp. Vacation Day Camp was a city-run program in New York City in the 1970s. My local public school was transformed into a place where one could play basketball or bump a pool, make arts and crafts, or learn a new dance move. It was a safe haven for kids during the sweltering days in the city. At the end of the summer, a track and field Olympics of public school programs was held. When I was 11 years old, I was assigned to the long jump. For weeks, I practiced standing at a chalk line, jumping with my 2 feet together. I was an awkward, tall, lanky kid at that age. I practiced every day without much improvement. Hang in there, kid, my coach encouraged me. On the day of the event, about 100 kids from all over Queens were spread out on Newtown High School's athletic field. The long distance and sprinters were hanging around the running track, while the jumpers and javelin throwers were assembled around the edges. There was a lot of standing around as we waited for our event. I got to watch many of the athletes compete before it was my turn. There were different types of jumping events. The biggest mistake one could make was to step on the takeoff marker board, which resulted in instant disqualification, or to fall backwards, as the distance jumped was measured from the marker board to the location the closest body part landed. Hence, if someone fell backward, the length of their body would subtract from the distance their feet landed. As the jumpers were in the air, their teammates would often shout, "Lean forward, lean forward." To my surprise, the event I participated in wasn't a standing long jump, but rather a running long jump. Contestants would run as far as possible, then leap when they approached the takeoff marker. Maybe my tall, lanky body could serve me well. When it was my turn, I ran at my highest possible speed, leaped with all my gusto. Remembering to lean forward, I made 3 good runs, and my best score was noted. To my surprise, when the winners were announced, my name was called for first place. I went up to the podium and received a small gold trophy. Walking home with my coach later that day, he said to me, "You did pretty good today, kid. Who knew you had it in you? You were so bad at practice, I had your name crossed off the list." Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next up, we have Sandra Kleven. Sandy is a publisher at Cirque Press, Anchorage, Alaska, home to the literary journal Cirque, now in its 13th year. Since an expansion beyond the journal in 2018, 35 books have been published. Kleven's writing has been printed in various journals. Her first book of creative writing, Defiant Speech, Poems and Other Writing, came out in 2010. Kleven is the author of Holy Land, a collection of writings about the issues found in rural Alaska, AQR 2005, and 2 children's books aimed at abuse prevention, The Right Touch and Talk About Touch. Her interest in the literary history of Seattle led to the creation of the film To the Moon, a tribute to Theodore Roethke in 2008. You can find it on YouTube. Kleven has an MSW degree from Eastern Washington University and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Alaska, Anchorage. She's been awarded 2 Celebration Foundation grants for creative work and an Emmy for an earlier film project. Born and raised in the state of Washington, Kleven has spent most of the last 40 years working with Alaska's tribal villagers as a clinical social worker. Take it away, Sandy.
Thank you. The canny invention. In order to write a poem, you have to invent a poet to write it. Antonio Machado. I enter my last decades in diminishing moments in the vanishing. I call myself poet and began the canny invention. Sandra, remember who you are. You have roots with the beats, the hip, the absurdus, Albee, Beckett, Ionesco, Janae. You got your kicks on Route 66. You read Burroughs' Naked Lunch while in high school, skimmed it anyway for the nasty parts in that incoherent logarithm of junk and jism. You read Norman Mailer, Lawrence Durrell, and Paul Krasner's The Realist. All of this material from that Harvard boy, let's call him Charlie. You found this reading intoxicating, forbidden, and a contrast to the bland sprawl of conformity out beyond Seattle's North End. You spoke then about the felt yoke of conformity. In the spring of your junior year, you had it with the rah-rah of high school. Your senior year, 4 months short of graduation, you were sent home from school because the administration learned that you were pregnant. They wanted you gone like an infection. You had no heart for a fight. It was better to go and find better people somewhere. You looked for them in the university district with Charlie. You found something there. The dark time became good time. Theodore Roethke taught at the University of Washington, and he drank, I left out a paragraph. The Blue Moon Tavern in the University District was the center of a social milieu that included professors, poets, Marxists, artists, and alcoholics. There was an ethic of inclusion, and no one passed judgment except against the squares. Theodore Retke taught at the University of Washington, and he drank at the Moon. In winter of 2010, as part of my MFA degree, I went back to the University District to make a film about Retke, an homage. It was a homecoming. When I had arrived in the district, expelled from high school, I was too young to drink at the Blue Moon Tavern, but I moved among those who were Retke's friends. Soon I had a baby and didn't do nightlife, and I was busy trying to finish high school, but I knew this community. And when my high school pushed me out, these wild ones embraced me. They made me feel like I was on the leading edge of cool. That's nice at 18. Do you remember now? You and Charlie went to North Beach, met Ferlinghetti. Later, Bob Dylan was the one you believed in. You did some acid. Pot made you paranoid, and twice put you into 5 minutes of white blindness. You shot up once to be able to say you tried it. You did. It was amphetamine. You are such a confessor. Liked speed in tablet form, but avoided it because the amphetamine junkies were dying. Sandy, you hate to be judged. You wanted to sleep around and you did your best, but it was hard to be so free. Hear this now. You know about this, how there is work and the work's work. Something you chew in the swamp of your mouth. You know that taste, honey and bile. You swallow it whole. You are always the last to know who you have failed. But if you are to end your life without a sense of failure, it will be because outside of your ramblings, this other half-digested thing has come up again as swell vomit. Well-formed, refined, close your eyes, blue and black mingle. Your fancy is tickled. Retke says, nonetheless, in spite of all the muck and welter, the dark and dreck of these poems, I count myself among the happy poets. There are things words cannot express, but there is a name for everything. Bruce, Brighton, Belinda, there's a forest leopard whose eyes shoot gold-killing beams. You slide under it with your slippery language because Adam could name things. You can name your childhood Blythe. You can name the Johnson administration Butch. Blythe and Butch might mingle. There was a debauchery followed by blight. You can change the names, the mingling, the monstrosity, the romance. Open a vein and bleed. The minions gather like ants. Take a stick and poke at the dirt where they enter underground chambers. You have done this in the past. There are names for girls like you. I woke up this morning with the idea of shrouding. I walked in poetry's mansion. Everything is shrouded with sheets, from tables for toast to all things large. The sheets themselves are shrouded on the shelf where they are stacked. Down in the root cellar, the celery is shrouded. What a sight, this shrouded celery. The sauna is shrouded, the sun porch, the stairs, the salon, the situation, the sun, the sunset, the sun, the sonic boom, the sherbet, and the sorbet. The swimming pool is shrouded. Simple things are shrouded. Sandra is shouted and shrouded. The shrouded are getting crowded. Scimitar, slump, soot, saliva, sloss, and the Soviets are all shrouded. Don't worry, this list is under control. Everything in the universe that does not begin with the letter S is also shrouded. All the shrouded objects, situations, jokes, epics, passions, people, everything look like a gathering of common ghosts. This is good. I am a poet. I have managed the universe with my mind. I will end there.
Elizabeth Morse values the quirky, the darkly humorous. She is hardwired to be a night owl and writes exclusively after 9 p.m. Her work has been published in literary magazines such as Kinoscope, The Raven's Perch, and Kestrel. Her poetry chapbook, The Color Between the Hours, was published in 2023. She was a finalist in the Blue Light Press full-length poetry collection contest and has her MFA from Brooklyn College. And I believe you have Unreasonable Weather coming out soon, right?
Yes, in 2025.
Okay, wonderful. Take it away.
Thanks. Okay, this is the beginning of a short story, and the prompt was write about a champion. Okay. Kali's Clocks and Mirrors. Her name was Kali after the mother goddess who destroys evil to protect the innocent. The Kali I knew wasn't so aggressive, but she did protect me. Like her namesake, she was from India, but she spent a tame childhood in the UK. When I met her, she ran an antique shop. It was 1967. The store was tiny, but it contained treasures. One January day, I wandered over to the window after school. I was in no hurry to get home. My mother would be passed out on the couch while burning meat she was serving for supper. Or she might be irate, accusing me of taking something of hers. Neither of these possibilities was appealing. In the window, the antique shop had a mirror. Despite greasy hair and chubby cheeks, my reflection didn't look half bad. I pushed open the door. Might as well have a look around at all the fascinating objects. I had plenty of time until the bus pulled up. A bell rang as soon as I stepped inside, and a woman sitting in a rocking chair looked up. "Are you looking for anything in particular?" she said. Yes, but it wasn't in any of those blue glass bottles with shapely stoppers. I was looking for what some girls in my class had, the ones who often spoke in class and were cheerleaders. I was looking for a way to grow into my own life. I shook my head and started wandering around. She went back to her knitting, which I noticed went more quickly than my mother's, or my own for that matter. She wore a magenta silk scarf that covered most of her hair, which was parted in the middle and punctuated with a few strands of gray. An oversized fisherman's sweater hung from her shoulders, covering most of a straight skirt. She had on dark tights and loafers. Clocks hung on every wall, few of them operational. They were stopped at the times I started a novel, did a sketch, made fudge, or wrote a story, moments to savor. There were also mirrors with frames ranging from simple to ornate. Before long, I was seated in the armchair opposite her, describing how my mother screamed that I'd have to work in Woolworths if I didn't get better grades. I talked about my friend Yvonne and the books I was reading. She listened. Then she stood up and gestured toward my reflection in the mirror and said, "You're beautiful. You have everything to look forward to." She was just being kind, but her words felt better than any I'd heard in a long time. Then finally she said, "You're going to outgrow all of this and your life will improve." No one had ever told me that. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next up, we have Sue Oringel, who is a poet and writer and a teacher of creative writing and a psychologist in private practice in New York's Capital District. Her first full-length book of poetry, Carnival, was published by David Roberts Books in 2023. A chapbook of poetry, My Coney Island, was published by Finishing Line Press in June 2019, and a short essay, The Relative Truth in Tiferet Journal, Spring-Summer 2021. A graduate of the Warren Wilson MFA program, she is published in various journals. She also served as a co-translator for a collection of Latin American poetry, Messengers of Rain, published by Groundswood Press in 2022 and 2011. Fellowships and awards include Individual Artist Award from the Albany Schenectady League of Arts, a fellowship from the Vermont Studio Center, and an SOS Award sponsored by NISCA. She taught creative writing at Hudson Valley Community College from 2004 to 2017. Take it away, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to read a memoir piece, and the prompt was, "It was insane," which is a really great prompt for writing about something that's very hard to write about. A death of the family. It was insane, but I thought I could fly out to Denver in August 2007 to my dying mother a few weeks before the end and help her have a good death. Though the odds of helping someone with whom I'd had a very rocky relationship seemed low, I'd been able to help some of my most difficult clients find healing through deep listening and reflecting back their feelings. Surely I could do some of that with my mother. It was insane to believe my physician friends who said dying of a brain tumor would be an easy death. She'd just get sleepier and then pass. No, the more debilitated she got, the more agitated she became because she was terrified of not being in control and of death. I could understand that, but I was anguished. I couldn't find a way to help her. It was absolutely insane to equate being with my mother to working with clients. I hadn't grown up with my clients and I was never dependent on them as a child, but I wanted at the end to have the deep talks I never had with my mother. I hoped this one time we could be honest with each other, as we rarely had been, but we never got there. Actually, in those final days, I saw my mother become the self I had always known, only angrier, more frightened, and even less willing to admit needing or to ask for help. But I did get gifts from those final weeks. A mother and daughter working for the home health agency that my sister had hired had really bonded with my mother and wanted to be there 24/7 in her final days. Carla was nearer my mother's age and Deanne closer to mine. They were both born agains, which frightened me at first, but they were respectful and just wanted to help my mother transition, a word common to end-of-life parlance. I think they ended up being more helpful to me. When my mother would tantrum and scream and I would relive being a scared 5-year-old, Deanne would put her hand on my back and say, "Don't dissociate. This is not about you." She had had some counseling training, bless her, which made me marvel about the unlikeliness, as well as the gift of having a trained witness at my side. And when I borrowed my mother's car while she was sleeping to meet my sister and brother-in-law for dinner, I was later met at the front door by Harla, who whispered Mom was mad because I'd taken the car without asking. Was I supposed to have awakened her? Suddenly I was 17 again. And so it went. Day after day, my mother, the former esteemed history teacher, getting more and more upset and making less and less sense. "You think I'm stupid," she'd say. And I'd reply, at sometimes with more compassion than at others, "No, Mom, I think you have a brain tumor." She had been terrified my sister would send her to a nursing home. So my sister, for once, was the one banished from the house. It felt strange not to be the black sheep of the family. But what a gift to realize that being the favorite wasn't much better than being an outcast. It was insane. But almost 10 years to the day of my mother's death, my sister accused me of stealing Mom's stuff, especially her jewelry, which my sister had declared she never wanted. Mom's over-the-top gold items fit neither of our styles, but I urged her to at least take the unmatched leftovers so she could sell the gold. Later, she found those cheesy leftovers proof that I was cheating her. Believing I had cheated her was especially ironic because my mother kept confusing my sister with her own mother, whom she resented deeply, and had wanted to take my sister out of her will. I believe my mother kept her in only because I begged her to, saying, "Mom, I want to have a relationship with her after you're gone." But after my sister's accusations and my sending her all the items she wanted from an itemized list she demanded I provide, I'm a writer, I can make things up. We have exchanged a few emails, my cancer, her third marriage, my first, but basically, we are not speaking. The last day of my mother's life began with a loud bang coming from her bedroom. I jumped up from the sleeper couch in the living room and ran into my mother's bedroom to find her crawling on the carpet. It was 5 a.m., and she had fallen on the way back from her bathroom. It was also the birthday of my partner, Don, who had died suddenly 5 years earlier. Deanne came running in from my father's old bedroom soon after. My mother would not let us help her get up. She was afraid we'd drop her. So we hung out, us standing, my mother sitting on the floor. "Bev, do you want some coffee?" Deanne finally offered and came back with a mug. And that's how time passed for a few hours. My mother finally crawled to the bed, and only when we promised to drape her over it and lift her legs did she let us get her back in bed. I marveled at the intensity and insanity of her insisting on being in total control, and how futile it was. That she missed a chance to feel loved and cared for. She missed a chance to be helped. I promised myself to remember this. My mother moaned and dozed after the ordeal. Later, an overnight nurse from hospice showed up, and we both sat in my mother's room talking softly. We introduced ourselves to each other, and I remember she talked about getting out of a terrible marriage. I mentioned Don's death and how he was the first man I really trusted, how hard it was to lose him. My mother's moaning increased. I walked over to the side of her bed and placed my hand as gently as I could on her hair and stroked it softly. With all the force my mother could muster, she threw my hand off her hair as if some loathsome insect had just assaulted her. In shock, before I could stop myself, I said, "Fuck you." And I honestly don't know what happened after that. At some point, I was back in the room talking to the nurse. And then hours later, my mother's breathing changed. I remarked on it, and the nurse agreed. Softer, less fitful. I went to the side of her bed and listened, and she was gone. It was 11:45 p.m., the last 15 minutes of Don's birthday. The funeral home came at 2 a.m. with a hearse to take my mother's body away. I read When Death Comes by Mary Oliver at the funeral and choked up at, "I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms." Because these things were also true about my mother. But that is another story. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next up, we have Lisa Roma, aka Electric Goddess, who is a poet, photographer, calligrapher, painter, and songstress. She writes haiku and freestyle eco-poetry, shaping nature's soul into songs. As founder director of Creative Women's Network, she offers literary design and promo services. She is founder director of the Half Moon Theater Co., a virtual performance vehicle for musical theater. Her artwork, poetry, and photography have appeared in Medicinal Purposes, the Eve's Legacy Trilogy, River Run, 9 Lives, Wings Left, Poet Jane Publishing, and Modern Drummer magazine. She attended the Brooklyn Museum Art School, taught language arts, and holds a BFA in creative writing from Brooklyn College. Lisa received a first prize Donald Whiteside Poetry Award and several honorary mentions. Take it away, Lisa.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is one of the prompts. It's called Starting with the Weather, and the Ocean Doesn't Care. The weather doesn't care what neighborhood you live in or what country you're from, how much money you make or don't, what kind of politics you follow or not, or whether you've lost a loved one, experienced trauma, or lived a magical life, what kind of genius or creative you are, how many regrets you carry within your soul, if you or someone you love has mental illness or a Nobel Prize. The ocean doesn't care if you've done your homework, how many books you've read, what kind of artwork you paint, poetry you write, or what time of day or night you visit her sandy shores, in whatever season you choose to come, and as many times during the year you may come. She won't make you feel guilty about not visiting. The ocean will just say, with her salt in the air spraying waves, splashing into long-reaching ripples, spreading into rainbow bubbles of foam that tickle your toes with a chill, or moisten your shoes as you walk near her, watching seagulls standing in the shallow water, awaiting tiny morsels or crustaceans to crack open. Welcome. The ocean loves you just the same. The ocean loves when you call her name, Mother Ocean. She hears you and how you come to her with singing prayers of gratitude and wonder, innocence and sensuality, bearing your soul and wanting to enter her with your translucent skin, glowing like a newborn, re-entering the saline water of the womb. This is Mother Ocean, teaching you how to be a goddess, a sparkling mermaid in white, and a priestess of land. You embody the stars, you embody the galaxies. You are a reflection of each other. The moon's throbbing silver lifts you with gossamer, saying, this is what you need. This is what you have. The ocean calls to you with an ethereal soul that caresses the earth with mothering tides and nourishing minerals, feeding and habituating sperm whales, belugas, orcas, and dolphins, sharks, marlins, octopods, and eels, starfish and moonbeams, seaweed and coral reefs, flows like underwater galaxies, with the brave adventurers swim and dive in crystalline waters, blue as aquamarine skies, sharing the wisdom of their aquatic teachers, pulling plastic debris from the throat of a beautiful sperm, freeing a mother seal from the nylon fishing netting that cuts skin while wrapped around her pregnant body, as ancient eyes watch with trepidatious expectation. This is Earth Day, not a birthday or celebration. It's just a pardon for a wake-up call to stop polluting. The universe loves you, I am told, like a gold shiny button. The next piece is also a
little bit. You're breaking up a little bit.
The next piece is called Between Heaven and. Can you hear me?
Can do to be clearer.
Maybe if you speak more into the microphone.
Between Heaven and Earth. Is that better?
It is.
Okay. I love to watch homing pigeons spin black and silver circles above my head, out in the glittering blue, a trail of fluttering for all eyes to see who see. In these sunny cold days before spring, and the tall red maple across the way, reaching its slender tendrilled arms with wine-red fingertip buds stretching skyward, tasting cool air, thirsting for rain with its roots, with an ever-knowing, never-ending patience that winter will eventually end, painting shadows on the white brick house between us as they disappear on a mountainous rooftop beneath the heavens. I love that poetry in my meditation, a power accessible at any moment, and that I am nature and nature is me. As my arms emulate tree branches, reaching outward and upward, and trees are people too, life givers responsible for the very oxygen we breathe. The fresh cut grass of spring smells like cucumbers peeled in summer, and I can taste the pure water of snowflakes as they land on my tongue during winter. And the sudden burst of vibrating chartreuse buds on tree heads illuminating this evening air, each spring infinitesimal worlds within a world, emitting a throbbing pulsation of lights like those that sparkle during Christmas. And the weaving of autumn's crisp orange brown leaves between the end of summer and the beginning of winter that flutter by the wind, crumbling to the ground to become one with the mulch, that rich smelling soil at the feet of trees, Mother Earth's seedbeds, for new growth and the place where all things must eventually rest. These trees, our intermediaries between earth and heaven, are the repositories of birds' nests, where baby bird eggs hatch, becoming the small feathered things that chirp and grow into the dynamic, joyful fluttering that mesmerizes.
Thank you, Lisa. Cynthia Lee Steele. What was that? Cynthia Lee Steele serves as associate editor for Cirque, wife of Bill, mother of Shania and Dante, and dog whisperer. She has an MA in English and a BA in journalism and has published news stories statewide. Her new work appears in Cirque, Pensive, a global journal of spirituality and the arts, the Blue Mountain Review, and in the Anthology on Domestic Abuse When Home is Not Safe. Chapters from her forthcoming nonfiction book, 30 Before 13, have been published in Cirque and other journals. Take it away, Cynthia.
Thank you, Larissa. All right, I will read To Scream the Impossible Scream, because I think the length is right. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go. Scream, just try to scream. All that emits is air, a whooshing sound like brakes on a train or a city bus when someone pulls the cord, complete with the screech at the end. Like a cop show when some almost imperceptible whoosh and screech is heard in the background. They all scratch their heads and Bailey says, I swear I've heard that noise before. And they all find the kidnapped child just in time. He's still got a pulse, Jim. But I swear there were times when my own pulse grew faint and I imagined how they would find me too late because I hadn't been kidnapped. Because my abuser lived in our home. We fed him and laughed with him. I ran away until I learned that cops will always bring you back. And I learned for so long that to scream would not matter, even if I could. After high school, at 17, I called my real father. After not seeing or hearing from him for many years, and I asked if I could join him in Sitka, Alaska, about as far away as Seattle is from Anchorage. He worked at Sheldon Jackson College as part of the administrative staff as head groundskeeper. When I told him where I was, I'd hitchhiked a ride 500 miles from Big Lake to Fairbanks with a friend. He gave me the vagabond lecture again. I thought we barely know each other. But I was desperate. I promised to be on the honor roll and not embarrass him, a faculty member. He said a faculty member, I acknowledged. I'd be a faculty member's kid. The bar was high. I never felt I could do it, but I had nothing to lose but time. At Sheldon Jackson, I took acting and English classes there on the water of the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. This Sitka island of islands. During the day, I chatted up James Michener as he worked on his book, Alaska. On the weekends, I binge drank, danced at the local bars, at the Sciatica or Kixati with a fake ID. and passed out in the arms of any boy who wouldn't take advantage of me, often dramatically quoting Steinbeck or Shakespeare. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I alone beweep my outcast state. In short, they tolerated me. In acting classes during the week, I worked hard, but I often froze on stage. I also froze in life. I froze many times, and for reasons I could not explain. I no longer even tried. I just wrote it out. In one of my best moments, I played the part of Ariel to the director's Sebastian. Pointing, I declared, "You are 3 men of sin, you amongst men, being most unfit to live. I have made you mad." By his Sebastian, I mean a famous visiting director, actor, playwright from New York, whose name is now gone to me. No matter how I opened the door to this man for advances, he was quite handsome and I was quite young. He never showed me anything but kindness in his eyes. He never pushed me away. Rather, he focused on the lines we said, and we said them at the college, at the old folks' home, and on any stage that tiny town would have us in. He focused on the parts we played, the lives we stepped into. In class, he asked me one day to do the impossible. Not just me, but everyone. Larissa, I didn't time this. Can you warn me?
Keep going, Cynthia. We have time.
Okay. But it was as if I had been alone on stage. He asked us, to scream. My head got all swimmy, and I asked to be excused. I puked in the echoey bathroom with the clear block windows up high and the ivory everything. The sound of retching I had gotten used to, being, as I would name later, bulimic. But this was something else. Still, it was a purging, a cathartic form of emesis, like releasing the devil himself, followed almost instantly by a massive migraine. They'd been with me for years, these blinding headaches coming on strongly at the first sight of stress. After headache and vomiting from the migraine that lasted the usual 3 days, I returned to class hoping the screaming request had passed. "We held off the exercise," the room boomed, "until you were well enough to join us." "The fuck," I muttered under my breath, and feared that the director had heard. "What?" a peer asked. "I'm in hell," I said. Someone laughed. I admitted I can't do it. I could never scream. Even when I should scream, nothing comes out. Acid filled my stomach. I overshared again. I made a mental note not to elaborate. The director's dark head of hair turned toward me, and his eyes accepted my words as a challenge of the acting sort. "Use that. Yes, good. Use those memories, that energy to push the scream out." The rapes came back. The first when I was 11, then attempted rapes by my stepfather and his best friend that lasted for years. I fought back and I'd run away. I vomited in my mouth just a little and then I swallowed it. I stared at the director, my jaw grimacing, my eyes glazing over. "Right now, what's happening?" he said. Then, seeing my fear, he said quickly, "No, wait, don't answer that. Just think where you are. What's around you? Who's there? And scream." Air seeped slowly from my chest as I stood on that large auditorium's creaky stage. The noise was barely audible, even in this cavernous space where we all wore socks or tights to avoid making any noise. "Good," he said. He passed on to the next person. "Thank God that's over. I won't have to be tortured at this game that I cannot win," I thought. The class became funny with my classmates' huge screams and laughs. The director looked at me like I was all groovy in every way. Then he turned to me abruptly and barked, "Cindy, scream!" I wanted to. I relaxed one fraction of an iota, purposefully, and my voice came out in fits and starts. like a baby donkey learning to bray, like a woman strangled. Better, you're getting better. I felt lightheaded, but not like puking. I guess that was progress. I looked around the room and thought, no one knows. No one knows my private hell. Why can't I yell? Years of conditioning, a hand over my mouth and eyes while he took my virginity. Immobile, muteness. No one knows this. The director went around the room again, and just like before, he stopped on me. I did it already, I said. The eyes around me looked confused. Had I not? I thought I had screamed. Let's do another exercise, he said, a body relaxation, and then try it. He was genius at getting us silly, flopping around, forgetting ourselves and laughing. Now, Cindy, scream, he called out. Scream for all you're worth. Scream for every reason you've ever had to scream. No air, just volume, and go. The shriek, the likes of which I'd only heard once, came out. The gargling, watery scream of the first shark attack victim on Jaws. I kept screaming as directed. From your feet to the top of your head, let it out. The shriek of a young fay ray, her blood-curdling long wails, head thrown back, arms wildly flailing at the creature King Kong. What seemed like 15 minutes later, my throat hurt and wet tears fell from my chin. I looked up and heard the clapping of my classmates, the look of pride on my director's face, and I was free. Thank you. I can't hear you, Larissa.
You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Larissa.
No. She's muted. Larissa, you are muted.
She knows.
She does.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. I will end on this. This is called Mad Woman. Here I am again, walking among these vague and tepid people. They evoke a slight feeling of distaste in me. They smell my pain. They have no idea. I just hold my phone, the cellular phone I use for disguise, and I talk to the ultimate answering service. I walk and I talk to God. When you died, I ripped the electrodes out of my skull and ran away from the land of cables and TV sets. Great battles of television were fought here. Great battles were lost. Soho is no different from uptown or downtown. It's all money and talking and bars, cars, sex, job. So I went to see the trees. The trees were luminous, the leaves forming patterns of light on the ground, and as the light played on my hair and my cheeks, I realized that no one ever dies. They just become trees. Even Marilyn Monroe was alive in a leaf. I saw for an instant your face, all a quiver in the shaking of a fern, in the light of the wind, and I kissed the trees, so I knew you were not dead, not really. You would not be so cruel as to die, really die. Under the West Side Highway, I met all the men who lived there and one girl. She was 22 and pregnant and had AIDS. I didn't stay long, but I stayed long enough. Under the West Side Highway, I slept with Jesus in a cap, talked madman Spanish with Tito and the dirty apostles, knew there would always be enough loaves and fishes for me, knew that no matter how hard it got, I would always be safe and held near, close to God. It was my destiny to be greatly loved. I chose then to be close to God, to throw away my clothing and be close to God. There were times when not even a shirt came between me and God. Under the West Side Highway, I spoke to Jesus, his face always changing. Now Alex, who lived in a tent near the wall. Now Panama, drinking wine. Now Juan in his tin and cardboard hut. You followed me, watched me. You were worried. How would I get home and back to the life I had known? And I said, look who's talking. You died after all. It's hardly for you to criticize me if I go off the beaten path too a little. And As for the others, they worried too, unknown to them the protection that I had and had always had. I said to them all, don't worry, I will love you home, pray you. Look, can't you see? I am your guardian angel. And you thought I was just homeless and mad, as though God hadn't made the whole world just for me. Well, I am cured. I go to the bank, I take pills, I sit in restaurants, have a job. I worry about money and whether my new boyfriend has AIDS. We don't even have sex. He's too busy with his job. It's just as well. None of these men have anything that would compel you or keep you through the night. It's just banging bones after all. You see, very few men have souls and very few men have courage. The few who have the courage to follow their souls are mostly all dead, lost in leaves. People kill them, you know. I don't know anymore. I take pills and talk into the cellular phone. Sometimes I think I hear your voice. Sometimes I think I hear you and then no, it's just the pills. I get a hum in my ear. It's not you. I know you are not dead, but you're not here either, and I miss you. I am cured, so they say, but you can't really ever take the gift of madness away. Once you have been stripped by God of everything, clothing, family, freedom, senses, you are his for life, and I was stripped. Oh yes, dear Lord, of everything, every last thing. God took everything, leaving only my soul, but I found that was enough. And you people think you have things, but really the next breath you take is the only thing you have. So how different are you from me? Look at us again, we the homeless, and see us for who we are, the archangels of God. You cannot take the gift of madness away. I will always know about trees, will always see the arch of my lover's neck in the patterns of their life. I will know that the patch of sky between the birch tree and the willow is him, his azure face, and I will always hear the voice of God. Wherever I go, no pill can block him out. No TV set can drown his voice. No fool can block the face of God from me. Look at me, madwoman. I am Magdalene. I am Joan of Arc. I am Saint Marilyn Monroe, and I will always be your angel, baby. I will always be your saint. Pray to me. Thank you. And we have come to the end of our program. I want to thank everyone who participated and all those of you who came to listen. Thank you very much. And always know a prompt to write on.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Larissa.
Thank you, Larissa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Larissa.
Love to everyone. It was beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Larissa, for all you've encouraged in us.
Absolutely.
This is amazing. Thank you so
Hey,
much, Larissa.
Thank you.
My example
and all you still will encourage.
yes, exactly. It's been an amazing experience to be with you guys.
Yes.
Yes, really. Thank
Back
you all
soon.
so much.
You are amazing, awesome, and astounding, and all the other A words.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Gotcha, baby.
Not asshole though.
I was thinking
Okay.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Sandy and well,
Cynthia.
yes, get in touch with me.
Yes.
Hey.
You guys, yeah, please stay in touch.
I'm gonna be in Alaska, in Anchorage in June.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Very good.
Great.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Love you all.